58 our time, and just assuming that there's a little bit of lag, we figured we clock in early. So we'll give a moment or two for people to connect. We've got our brand. Let's go to the
There
chat.
we are. Hey,
We're there.
we're there
Hi,
now.
we're
Yes.
there. We're connected. Where's the public? We go to the public chat. There's the public chat.
Yep.
And we're
There's
just gonna
me.
say,
I'm there. Hi, me. Anybody interested in commenting and joining in on the conversation, please feel free to join us. We would love to hear from you.
yes, yes. So
So yes.
we'll give it to 8 o'clock our time, and then we're gonna announce. So, yeah, we got another minute here. Are people getting connected? Are people getting home from tonight's meeting? The
Yes.
Spill the Tea
Yes.
event, which
So tell us, give us your summary of what the Spill the Tea event, what your takeaways from the tea event were.
So,
How about we start
actually,
there?
why don't we start there? First of all, welcome to the TOWTalk podcast. I'm Denise. This is Neil.
And I'm
This is
Neil.
our Tuesday evening live stream, guys. Uh, hope you enjoyed it. This evening, Supervisor Frank Dendanto held his first Spill the Tea event. He had promised during his campaign to be more transparent and to communicate more with the public, so much more than what the last board did. And this was his first evening demonstrating that. So after a month into his I guess administration, he gave us a summary of what's going on, and then we went into a pretty lengthy question and answer session. And one of the things he did note that I think for all of us who have been concerned about the finances in the town, he did announce that he employed an outside forensic accountant. Uh, they're connected to the Deloitte, which is a big firm in the city.
No, they're former Deloitte. They're
They're
former Deloitte.
that's okay, that's right.
Right.
And
They're former. I want to be clear. This is not Deloitte. This is no affiliation with Deloitte. These are Deloitte. Former employees or partners of Deloitte that split off, wanted to do their own thing. Okay,
okay,
and they do some work now for Deloitte when they do have one-off instances, and so therefore the town supervisor was referred to them by Deloitte to do a forensic audit of the town's finances. Sorry, just wanted to make sure we were clear on
that's
that.
it. That's it.
Right.
So, well, I forgot the name of the firm. It was like something with a. It sounds like it starts with an O. Oh, okay.
I can't remember.
I couldn't remember the name of the firm. I did, by the way. I recorded almost the entire thing. I missed maybe the first 2 minutes or where he kind of introduced what he was doing and all. But I got his summary, and then I got the question and answer, which got a little spicy um, when we got to. No, don't talk about it. No,
Not
you know,
me. No, no.
no,
Would I get into
no,
a fight with anybody? No,
no,
never.
not Neil. No, but
Not me. No.
it obviously the we he like I said, he first of all he addressed the issues with the finances. They are going to be breaking into the books and and really getting into what's happened. Uh, what I got from summaries is that it's going to take some time. So where he summarized on finances was that they're breaking in, they're looking at where the leaks are, where they can stop the leaks, and putting in policies for the future to prevent what has been happening in the past from continuing. But that it still might not take, it's going to take a lot longer than just a month or two to clean up the mess that's in there. So that's something to think about. But from what I can see is that Frank and the board are moving in the right direction with regard to that. And then we went into question and answers. Obviously, the first question was regarding the ICE detention center. And there was, now, if you watched our most recent episode, Neil and I covered that. Neil took some video of his town supervisor where he works, because he works for the town of Chester, and himself, who both spoke in front of the legislature in helping to, encourage, guide the vote to oppose the ICE facility. And as we reported then, it passed unanimously, 21-0. So that's a resolution saying we don't want this. As we discussed in our episode, it's not really a law, it's not really legislation, but it is affirming our position to not have this in our community. And so a woman, I believe her name was that Maria, was her name, that lovely woman who spoke. She asked a question if the town would be signing on in support of that resolution, and Frank did confirm that. And so it kind of sparked people who are, let's face it, we are living in two different realities. And there's the reality where we see, where we're getting our news from different sources, and we're seeing videos from people who are out in the streets, and they're reporting different things than what's being reported by mainstream media. And we have the Fox News media that reports that it's only criminals and whatnot, and then you have other mainstream like ABC, NBC, not CBS. I think they're going along with Fox now, that simply don't touch the topic. They don't report it at all, and or very little. You see very little, and then you have independent media, which is getting information from people who are on the streets, and they're out on the streets, and we see different things. And so that leads people to be, people are a product of the information that they're fed. And if you don't see what's happening, one person asked Maria, what are you afraid of? And, she, in her question, she pointed out, where are we going? Exactly what you said, by the way, Neil, exactly what you said. What is the final solution here? Why do we need hundreds of warehouses across the country to house people? Obama didn't need it. Bush Jr. didn't need it. Clinton didn't need it. And they deported millions of people. And they didn't need to create a system of warehouses all over the country. And so her concern was that they were going to be housing more than just immigrants. And that's something that we brought up here. And so it obviously triggered people on the other side, and again, people shouting about illegals. Neil got into a rather loud conversation with someone who was asserting now that we have 17 million illegals. I'm going to tell you, the number changes all the time. I've heard 5 million, I've heard 10 million, I've heard 50 million.
It grows exponentially depending on the argument of the person on the other side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and my thing is I really try not to argue, right? As much as my style is argumentative, right? Like, I understand I have a very argumentative style, right, to how I talk, but I was really just trying to ask the guy a question, right? And I've always found when you ask questions, right, you can get to the root of where it is. So I've always asked a question, right? Like, when somebody comes at me and says, there are 17, these people are illegal, we have to do, right? And so my question is always, well, who determined whether they're illegal or legal, right? What is the determining factor, right? Like, who made that determination? Okay, because a determination of legal or illegal can only be determined by the court. Okay, if your idea that legal or illegal can be determined by the executive, right, by one person in this country, right, think about that. Like, think that through. I really want people to understand and think that through, right? Because if your determination is that Trump, Marco Rubio, Christy Nome, Pam Bondi, right? Like any one of these people can make the determination of whether you are legal or not, or whether your documentation is valid or not. Okay, right? Then we've become a lawless nation. Okay, like
We've
then
become a
there is no
dictatorship.
law, right? Because at any point in time, they can just say you don't have it, and you know one of my main concerns, and it happened fairly recently, right? And I'm gonna say fairly recently and qualify it with I don't know what happened, but children have gone missing. Okay,
Yes.
children are going missing. Okay, this isn't a well, ICE had they've gone missing. ICE is not saying where they are. Okay, and have no idea where they are. Okay, all right. The child welfare, which deals with children, okay,
Yes.
right, doesn't know where they are. Public officials don't know where they are. They don't know where the children are. And you have a billionaire club, right, that likes to rape, murder, mutilate little children and infants.
Yep.
Okay?
Yes.
I am fuming like you wouldn't believe, right? Because as much as I don't want to believe it, right, it's anybody who's read the Epstein files, anybody who's keeping track of this shit, right? ICE could be stealing these little children for the billionaires. And they haven't stopped anything. Epstein being dead means nothing.
Didn't stop anything. That it came out in the files that this is still
doesn't
continuing.
Right. So they're now taking kids away from immigrants, right, and giving them to these billionaires, allegedly, right?
Allegedly.
Like
Yeah.
like we don't know where the kids are going, and that's the thing. So I'm gonna give you an example. A woman, and I believe it was, I want to say Oregon, a woman in Oregon, okay, was recently summoned to ICE because they wanted her. They wanted her. They wanted her. Her fingerprints, right? Because they're getting everybody's biometrics, right? So they wanted her fingerprints. She comes in. She's in the waiting room. Okay, she has her 8-month-old kid nursing. Okay, in the waiting room because she's been waiting for so long. Now she has to nurse. Okay, so now she's nursing her kid. ICE comes up, separates the woman and the kid while she is nursing. Okay, separates the two of them, right? Then forces her and says, "You want your kid back? You have to sign this document that you're going to be deported. That we're going to deport you, right?" So they force her to sign the document, right? And she signs the document with the understanding that she's going to get her kid back. Okay? They put her on a plane, they deport her. She hasn't seen her kid since. Where's the fucking kid?
Wow.
I'm like, how soon, like, as much as like these white supremacists out there, right? And I'll call them that, right? Or the KKK or whatever, right? Think like this is okay, right? Because it's, black and brown people, okay? How soon before these billionaires decide that, you know what? Fuck it. That little white girl over there, let's take that little white girl, okay? And, disappear the parents so nobody knows. How soon before that happens? You think that isn't happening? You think that they're not going after the in Minnesota, right? All those families out in Minnesota that has a 2% immigrant population? Okay?
Yeah.
You don't think all the right? Like, what do you think is happening out there? It's a test ground. This is what they're doing. Ground. They're testing whether they can have the ability to treat white people the same way they treated black and brown people.
To your point, so they got rid of Bovino. the guy who dressed like a Nazi, and they brought in marble mouth Tom Homan, and one of it I can never understand a word he says, right? And so they removed they took out 700 ICE agents from the community, and I guess put them somewhere else. And I guess that's supposed to give the impression that things are simmering down. But the report, they're not. They still have 2,000 people in that community in a city that has a police force of 600. So we're talking, 4 times the amount of people here of law enforcement. And so the same stuff is happening. People are still being beaten. I saw a video just earlier this morning. Was it this morning? Where you had six ICE agents on one guy. They pulled him out of his car, threw him face down on the ground. They're all sitting on him, and one is taking his knee and kneeing the guy in the head. It's like, why is that necessary? How is that? How do you one of the things that happens with law enforcement, and you and I have joined a group in Warwick, and it's a Warwick group. It's our other TOW. And one of them today, I guess it's a public group, and so it's someone who's, I guess, a MAGA supporter jumped in and said, "I support law enforcement." And so the response was, "Did something go on? Did something happen?" And look, we all support law enforcement when law enforcement is in fact enforcing laws and not using their power and taking their power into their own hands and brutalizing people. You got the guy. He's on the ground. His hands are behind his back. Why are you kneeing him in the head? Why are you pounding on the guy? And the next thing I saw, they lifted him up, and he looked like he was unconscious. His head was hanging. Like, why is this necessary? So this is the kind of stuff that people in Minneapolis are seeing. And the woman that was filming it, she was yelling, "What are you doing? He's there. He's on the ground. He's not fighting back." But they dramatize, They struggle. They're struggling to hold a little. This guy was little, too. I mean, if he was 130 pounds soaking wet, that's a lot. And you got these 6 guys loaded with tactical gear, jumping all over this poor fellow. And you have to wonder why is that necessary? So it makes the public lose their confidence in law enforcement when you see that. And this is the reason why people are against ICE.
Have you read, I know you have, but for the public, if you haven't read the Epi files or whatever the hell you want to call them, right? Yeah. You have to understand the cruelty is what gets these guys off, right? Yep. Like this as much as we look at this and we look at civil rights and we look at, right? These guys, right, are getting off, right? They get sexually aroused, okay,
by fear,
the violence and the fear, okay? They are having their guys, they're not using body cameras. They're having them like actually film the violence themselves and upload it to a database. Well, who gets that database? Who has access to the database? It's not a public database. It's not a government database. It's a private billionaire database run by Peter Thiel, who was best friends with Epstein and was in the Epstein files and formed a partnership with Epstein. Okay? So, understand, right? You may be like, "Oh, this is great. I'm a whitey, so I don't have to worry, but they're just going after black and brown people, so I feel safe," right? But here's the thing. These guys, right, this is what gets them off, okay? This is, you read this stuff. This isn't just about money and power, although it's a lot about money and power, right? Yeah. This is about, these people get off on their power and their money and everything else like that. It's orgasmic to them. Okay. Yeah. There's a sexual component to this to them. Right. And those people are very sick individuals. Okay. The
It's
people like that are very sick individuals. Okay. And, you know, ICE has now become essentially their own little police force, right? It's a billionaire police force, okay?
yes.
Paid for with your taxpayer dollars. And if I had to listen to, well, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that for a million years from the right wing, well, as somebody on the other side, right? I don't want my tax dollars going to concentration camps and to the Epstein billionaires. Like, I really just don't. I don't think it should. I think all these guys should be in jail. I don't. This is not about politics for me.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
about politics. This is not about left and right.
This is about up and down, you know. It is, and you and I have discussed this before. I mean, some of the stuff that is in there, if you are if you have not looked at this, and let me tell you, there's a database. You can go and they took the zip files off. You were able to download the stuff, and then they realized what they left in there. They left a lot of stuff in those files that they ended up pulling off the server, and then they took the zip files down, and now you have to search it. So it could take you years to go through all of the stuff that's in there. But the stuff that came out is some of the most disturbing stuff. You can't imagine how horrible it is. There was a video that they took down, but it got out there, and I saw it. A woman, she was Spanish speaking. She, I guess it was in a hotel lobby. She was the one who was screaming in Spanish that they were
Yeah.
dismembering
Yeah,
and eating
mentioned
babies.
her. Yes. Yes, I
Yes.
mentioned her. Yeah.
Dismembering and eating babies. I kid you not. I mean, the thought is like, what?
But can we? This gets down to the granular detail, and I really want people to understand what we're talking about here, okay? Because we can give these little examples, right, of the horrible things that they did, okay? But you have to understand that Epstein was not the be all end all, right? This was a corporation, okay?
There were
This was a
co-conspirators.
business. This was a business operation, okay? Which Trump, you had, allegedly had Les Wexner, right, of, who runs Victoria's Secret, right? So now you have to start looking at these institutions, okay? What was Victoria's Secret really selling? Was it selling lingerie, or was it selling women to billionaires, right? You had gynecologists, you had plastic surgeons, you had dentists, you had other medical professionals, right? You had captains of industry, you had billionaire women who were CEOs. You had billionaire men who were CEOs, right? Like,
He had a drug operation. There was drug pharmacy. He was selling
Right.
drugs.
And on top of which, they were selling information, insider trading. So you keep hearing about how you go to Congress and you're making millions. That was all through Epstein, okay? Epstein would be dropping so you would have a member of Congress that would get a piece of information. They would slip it to Epstein. Epstein would then slip it to Jamie Dimon, who then would get his people on it, and then they would all be able to profit off of that stock. Okay? That's how the operation worked. Okay? Insider trading, SEC violations. This was a business enterprise that encompassed everybody. They had local police, okay? They had corrections officers. They had police. They had like one of the head detectives of the NYPD. Okay, they had. I mean, you're talking. I think I mentioned on a previous podcast that they had officers in Canton, Massachusetts, right, and the entire
Yes,
DA's office, right. These guys were this was a whole business enterprise that they had going on of payments, information, you name it. And there may have been people, there are a lot of people involved who may not have been trafficking in women, but they were trafficking in information. Or they were doctors who were helping out in certain areas with women, maybe doing gynecological exams or STD testing or whatever, or prescribing medicine. Okay, so they may not have had direct links to any of the women, but they had links to the criminal enterprise.
Think about
Okay,
that. That's
this is
sick.
this is this is the mafia, right? This is the shit of the mafia. This is racketeering at its finest. Okay, and people who don't understand that are the ones out there screaming one thing or another, but the criminal enterprise has not stopped. It is still going. Okay, and what we need to do is we need our politicians, we need somebody to start holding these people accountable. Okay,
Yes.
we need attorney generals, we need U.S. attorneys, we need an attorney, like a U.S. attorney general. Like, we need people in positions who will actually do something. Right? This goes back to Hoover, right? Like when we had the bonfire of the vanities in the Roaring Twenties. It wasn't Roaring Twenties because everybody was doing great. It was because of the excesses of the wealthy who seemed to just get away with violating whatever laws they wanted, and being able to accumulate as much wealth as they can possibly imagine.
Yes.
Okay, and
Yeah.
it took a leader like FDR to come in and unwind that. And it took him 4 fucking terms to do it. Okay. And now we are back here again, but now it's actually a million times worse because now we got a wannabe
Much
Hitler,
worse.
right, in the freaking White House, right, that wants to start up the concentration camp game again. Okay. And again, what is the final solution? What is the end result? And that is my fear, right? Because, right, not for nothing, the town supervisor of the town of Wuckle had it right? How your property value is going to be when you're living next to a mass grave,
Yeah. Think about
right?
that.
So
That is
let's
a
be
horrible
selfish
thought.
about it. Fuck the people, right? We don't care about people. How are you going to feel when your property is not going to be able to be sold, right? Because now it's buried next now it lives next to a mass grave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Okay?
and that was, that was when the current just getting back to the meet
Sorry.
spill the tea event. No, no, it's all right. It's all right. We have a lot of emotions about this. Um, things got heated. People argued, and Frank Dandanto had to like shout, "Hey, knock it off." And he brought up the point that you know he used Malone, New York, as an example, that housing values drop when you have a prison in the neighborhood, and that in this case, with a detention facility with the constant back and forth and driving back and forth all over and people back and forth, and of course, like it or not, if there's a detention facility there, you're going to have protesters, and so you know it can bring down if it's there long term, it will affect property values. Nobody wants to live next to a prison, whether it's being protested or not. Nobody wants to live next to one. um, and so he kind of brought that issue, since that's the one thing that he can control, the emotional side, and whether or not it can be, well, we've gone over this, whether or not it can be zoned out. The government's going to do what the government's going to do, but how we're impacted, we can all talk about the personal impact, just like we just did, but we can also talk about our property values and how that also affects the tax revenue, because the federal government, if they take over the building, as your town supervisor in the town of Chester pointed out, there would be a substantial loss to tax revenue. So he brought the conversation back to that level, because that's something that impacts all of us equally, regardless of where we sit on left or right of
Well,
this topic.
it's very much, this is what is very sad about this argument, right? And listen, I love the argument. I think it's a great argument to make because it's a very valid argument, but it's a very capitalist argument.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like at the end of the day, it's a very capitalist argument. And it seems like there are a lot of emotions on both sides. We can talk about, my family, evading Nazis and coming here to avoid concentration camps, right? And America being home and welcoming and all that kind of stuff. And that's the country that we want to be and convey, right? On the other side of it, has that really ever been our country? We can debate those things, right? But at our core, we've always been capitalists, right? Even those people at Woodstocks were, at the end of the day, capitalists. Okay, right? So, and listen, I'm not insulting anybody who's been at Woodstock. There have been a lot of articles about Woodstock and the capitalism that ensued afterwards. Yes, it
Mm-hmm.
stopped a war. Great. It was very emotional to stop a war, but at the end of the day, it was actually very capitalist. And it was capitalism that stopped the war. And and I think that that's sort of what we need to ask ourselves, right? It's like these are our property values. This is where our investment is, right? We're invested in our communities through our homes, through the homes that we buy. We're invested in our communities, um, you know, in various ways. And somebody is coming in and basically stealing our investment for their own politics.
Yeah.
So, you know, listen, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Okay, you may have you may say, "Oh, this is great. I'm happy that they're doing these things." Are you going to be as happy if your property values decline as a result of that coming here, or as a result of having those mass graves in the adjoining town, or maybe in your town?
Good question. Good question.
I mean, listen, how many people are looking to move to where Auschwitz is? You know,
Yeah, really.
I mean,
Or
it's not
alligator
like,
Auschwitz. We got our own
listen,
Auschwitz now.
it might, listen, it might be a great place, and maybe there are homes around there. I've never been to Germany. I don't know, right? But I would assume that they have some homes there. But I got to assume that people that's not something that people really want to live next to. You know.
I wouldn't want to live next to it. So that's yeah, so that's what happened there. And obviously it led to a bigger conversation. Um, but other topics were spoken about, right? There was a conversation about the ambulance deal that they did. I think
Yes.
someone was concerned. I guess from what I gathered from that woman's question, I guess she felt that since there was a certain amount of our tax dollars that were going to go to the ambulance system, for the town, that it would be free ambulance for everybody. And I guess he sort of explained that it was really paying for the contract to have them serve the town. Am I
So
understanding that right?
listen, I was at the public hearing for this. Okay, I sent the letter. You can foil the letter. Anybody wants to foil the letter that I wrote, you can foil the letter that I wrote. It was pretty clear to me that the town was being overtaxed for what it was getting, without a doubt. All right, you listen. You could be supportive of the Waukegan Ambulance Corps. You could be supportive of having a dedicated ambulance service in your community, right? The other side of that um is you could also want to look out for your constituents and how you pay for those services. Okay? And I really hate the fact that anytime you comment on something that everybody automatically attacks you for being negative, right? It's the idea that you can't have an open, intelligent conversation, and that's really what I liked about Frank's Spill the Tea event, was that it actually allowed for an open dialogue, unlike a public hearing, right? Which doesn't allow for that, right? It's literally like you against the board, and you get shouted down like you're against it. No, I'm not against it. I'm looking out for the best interest of the taxpayers. So, something that should have been discussed and looked into should have been revenue sharing, right?
Yeah.
because
Okay.
because so it's a dedicated ambulance service to the town of Walk Hill, so there'll always be an ambulance in the town of Walk Hill to service town of Walk Hill residents from the Walk Hill Ambulance Corps. Okay, yes, you are going to get charged for that service, no matter what that is. You will get charged for that service. This is just to have the ambulance in the limits of the town, to have the dedicated ambulance. So if there's a call that comes in Montgomery, right, that ambulance can't go to that call because that has to stay here in the town of Walk Hill. Only with an intermunicipal agreement with another municipality can that ambulance go. And right now, I don't believe any of those intermunicipal agreements actually exist. So that's essentially her. So her question is why am I paying taxes, right, and then have to pay for the service? Okay, you're paying for the dedicated ambulance to be within your community. Okay, where I had some issues with the service, right? Again, nothing against Walk Hill Ambulance Corps. I have an issue with this everywhere, right? Like, first of all, I don't think it should be a local municipality issue. I think this should be either state or county. I mean, every other county around us has some type of ambulance agreement so that the local municipalities don't have to fund it. Okay, Orange County is one of the only ones that doesn't. Rockland has one. I believe Westchester has one. I believe Dutchess just got one. Putnam has one, right? Ulster, I believe, is getting one. So every other county around us is doing this except Orange County. Orange County has all this money, but it's chosen not to do the dedicated ambulance service. So it falls on local municipalities. Part of the reason that this is occurring is that the Medicaid payout for the ambulance is now significantly less. Okay, so when ambulance does come to your house, right, and wants to take you, they're not getting as much money as they used to get, and you have rising costs. You have the cost of the rig, you have the cost of gas, and you have the cost of your employees. And I'm sorry, you cannot run anything these days, your fire, your ambulance, or anything, on volunteer. Nobody wants to volunteer. Everybody's out for themselves. Everybody wants to get paid. I'm sorry. Yes, those things need to happen, and people just need to come to grips with the fact that you are paying a lot of taxes to the state and federal government, not your local community, to your state and federal government, and they aren't doing jack shit for you because they're giving money to the Epstein billionaires. There, I said it, right? As a part of their tax breaks. Yes, you're getting fucked. Okay, it's not your local municipality's fault that these things are occurring. It's not Walk Hill Ambulance Corps' fault that these things are happening, right? They're in a budget crunch, just like everybody else is in a budget crunch. George was very, very nice to them and decided to give them a bailout. There's no other way to look at it. That's what it was. He gave them a bailout, right? He didn't really negotiate. They came in, they said, "This is what we want," and that's what he ended up getting. Okay, so it is what it is. Again, we need an ambulance service in this community, right?
Or a
Walk
big
Hill
community.
Ambulance, right? Walk Hill Ambulance Corps is in this community, and they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Okay, and we were going to lose them. So this is where the public was, and having a good, positive dialogue to come to an agreement that would have been equitable, not only for the taxpayers, but for the Walk Hill Ambulance Corps, should have been the ultimate goal, right? But George and that board were such poor negotiators, okay, that they just gave him everything. And that was kind of how it ended up. So, it's sort of like sad, but these contracts don't last long, and the town will have an ability to renegotiate, which will be great, and hopefully they can negotiate a better contract at the
Yeah,
end
and
of the day.
and
But
I think Frank indicated that uh, was something that he would be looking into. I don't. Do
yeah,
you know how long the contract was? Is it?
I have not seen the contract, so I don't know how long it was. Usually they're anywhere between 1 and 3 years.
Okay.
So, but again, there are out clauses in there too. So, like with 90 days notice, you can get, I mean, and again, I haven't read the agreement, but most agreements have some type of out clause for both sides, right? To make sure. So, my feeling is Waukegan Ambulance Corps is a great company. They've done a lot of good work for the town. They're very community oriented in this community. They are a little bit more expensive than, say, some of the other companies out there. I'm happy to pay them a premium, right? But like what's happening now is absolutely insane. It's just absolutely insane. So Frank is a lot shrewder of a negotiator, so I'm assuming, when he takes a real look at it and this comes up again, he'll have the ability, he'll have his I's dotted and T's crossed.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that is watching or watches this after it's uploaded after recording. I did record almost the entire event. I missed maybe the first couple of minutes, getting myself, positioned and everything, where he just kind of explained what he was doing and why he was doing this. Spill the tea. He did point out it's going to be a monthly event. So I don't know if it's going to be on a Tuesday all the time or not, or how he's going to do it. But he did say it would be on a monthly basis, allowing him to relay go out to the public and just kind of give updates of what's going on. So we will be attending them in the future, and I will be as I recorded it, so I will take some clips from that and upload different pieces of it. I'm not going to upload the entire thing. That's it. It's over an hour. But it's over now. But you know what? It was a good conversation. I actually was very impressed. He really spoke clean. He was clear on everything that he said. Nobody really had questions about anything that he said. They asked questions about things going on, as opposed to, what did you mean by this? So there was no misunderstanding in the audience of anything that he said, and I think that's really important. From watching town halls from Serrano and everybody, people always had a lot of question. Well, there seemed to be a lot of evasiveness. And so that left people with a lot of questions in their heads. There was nothing that seemed evasive here at all. And in fact, Frank pointed out that was an issue himself, and said, so I want to be transparent. I want to be clear. I want there to be an open understanding. I want the doors to be open with the town. And I think that's really important, especially with all that we're dealing with, with this finance issue, just how convoluted it
Yeah.
is.
I think so. One of the things that Frank mentioned, the town supervisor and the town of Waukegan mentioned, he said that, going out the door, the outgoing administration basically sort of deleted kind of a lot of stuff off the system, right? So they had to kind of reinvent the wheel, right? Security, all that kind of stuff, like just stupid stuff, like, really petty, like nonsense that children do, right? So there was a lot of that they had to deal with. He changed over the town's attorneys. Great job, bravo to
Yes,
that.
that
So he brought in a labor attorney to help create some policies and procedures. About fucking time. That's all I got to say. I do know the attorney that they're using, and she's very good. So very very happy with that, because I really that you know anybody who remembers the 8 years that I was there, That's what I complained about the most, was that there was no standardization, there were no policies and procedures, everything was vague, right? And open to interpretation, right? And it usually meant that whoever was in charge got to do whatever they wanted. Okay? And you can't run any organization where the rules change based on the person in charge. You just can't, right? It doesn't, it won't go well, you know, right? Your employees then don't know whether they're coming or going. All of a sudden they're doing it one way 1 minute, next minute they're doing it another way, and then somebody else comes in, and then they have to find a new way to do it, right? And and, and
You need a
just
standardization of of policies.
and not for nothing, the one thing I found, being, having worked in offices for my entire life, okay, is that people really want to do better in their job. People really want to improve, right? The way that happens, okay, is that you create guardrails for them. You create the guidelines. You say and then you say this is the goal I want you to get to, okay? And then as they start moving toward that goal, right? You say, okay, great, next and next, and you keep encouraging them to do better and better and better, right? What these guys would do is you know they would constantly be changing things. Oh, I want you to do it this way. Oh, well, no, now I need you to do it this way. Oh, but now I need you to do it this way.
That's never going to
you know
work. You're confusing people and you're slowing the system down.
And that's what they did. That's why we were always late on paying bills. That's why, the town lost its bond rating. That's why we lost a number of store credit lines that the town had, right? Like, that was the crux of why everything was so backward, was because you had board members constantly changing the system. Okay. And when that happens, you can never achieve any type of goals, because you're constantly then going, oh, wait a minute, well, if I did, now I have to go back and change, well, but I can't change these, but like, and then you're like all over the place, and then you second guess yourself with everything, and then everything becomes well, you told me to do it this way the last time, how do you want it done this time? And I'm sorry, I guarantee you, everybody watching this show, okay, will tell you that at some point in time in their career, they have been through that, okay, and know exactly what I'm talking about. When you have to go to your boss and ask them how to do things because of the fact, and you've been there a while, because of the fact that they've told you to do it 3 or 4 different ways prior. And you want to make sure you do this one the exact way that they want, because you don't want to have to redo it 50 million times. Okay? And
this is why you have a standardization of policies
right.
that carry
so,
that. Go ahead.
Right.
I'm sorry.
That's what was happening, and that's what I was trying to convey in the town of Wackel. And I'm glad to see that Frank is now addressing that, because that's important. That's exactly. And now what you'll see is employees will actually now enjoy their work environment, right? They'll start realizing that they can achieve these goals, right? Now goals become attainable versus unattainable, okay? And now with the standardization, they can sit back and do their job and not have to wait for an answer of how they're supposed to do their job this time, because they've been told to do it different ways a million other times.
Yeah. So another thing that came up that he brought up when he was announcing all the different things that accomplishments that have happened in the last month, he said that they, I guess, had a ribbon cutting. He didn't attend it, but he knew we had a ribbon cutting on 2 cannabis stores, right? Was it 1 or 2?
One opened, and I believe that there's approval for another one.
For another one that opened in the town. And this was something that it brought up some questions, some concerns. But but he had been in support of having a cannabis shop because it does bring in a lot of revenue for the town. It can be a high, it can be a high revenue. And
There were only two councilmen when the law was passed to pass it. There were only two board members who voted to allow cannabis sales in the town of Wackel back then, and that was me and Supervisor Frank D'Andanto. Okay, and it failed because the other three were against it, right? Because, okay, here's the best part. Because they individually wanted to find a way to profit from it.
really, well, that's interesting. How would they have done that? Like, what they wanted to open their own store, or
Look at what Frank said. I want everybody to start piecing stuff together, right? Like, I'm trying to put the pieces together of the puzzle for you with Epstein, right? Put the pieces together in the town of Wackel. So what the supervisor said tonight was that only 2 cannabis shops were approved because that's all the town zoned for, right?
yes,
They earmarked it for 2 specific businesses. Okay?
oh,
All right. So you cannot
this, guys?
zone for a specific business in a specific area. You can zone areas, but you can't say, well, this section here, they get one, and this property here gets one, but nobody else gets one. That's not how zoning laws work. Okay?
Right. And he said that there could be litigation that would have to
Absolutely. So now what they've done is all right. Like, so what they were against was they wanted to make sure that it was zoned properly. But now what they did is they created a situation where anybody who wanted to have one could sue, and they would win, and they would end up with a cannabis shop. So now we have no zoning for cannabis. Right?
wow.
Right, because at the end of the day, you could file a lawsuit in some other zone, and you could say, I want to open up a cannabis shop in the R1 or whatever, or the R2, right? And I'm going to sue the town because you didn't zone this properly because, of whatever reason. And, you'll likely win that lawsuit. And then at the end of the day, they're going to say, yeah, you can have your cannabis shop there.
Interesting statement. I know you're not saying they did that so they can monopolize the drug industry.
It wasn't about monopolizing the drug industry, right? They wanted the campaign donations, right? They wanted whatever other things that they were getting from it, right? So, like, from a political standpoint, right? Like, so we all talk about Citizens United. We talk about money in politics, right? We have this conversation all the time, right? And the one thing I've told people is when you look at where the development happens, it happens in your local community, right? You could say state and federal level. State and federal, they deal with regulations, right?
Okay.
But regulations, at the end of the day, it's not about you. It still doesn't allow you to build the thing. What allows you to build the thing is the zoning. Okay? Right? Is your local community where that thing is going to get built. So you have developers that want to build a thing in the town of Wackel, and you have a board that controls where that thing can be built. And you're running for public office. Okay. McFly, like, put 2 and 2 together. Jesus Christ. Couple of campaign donations, couple of support, allow you to put your signs on their property, you name it, right? Like, next thing you know, your property is zoned for cannabis. Your property and one other property are zoned for cannabis. No other properties are zoned for cannabis.
Sick. So yeah,
right?
Well, that was interesting.
And listen, this is local politics, right?
Yeah.
Right. this is why I said on day one, just open it up, because you could be somebody who's anti-drug, you can be somebody who's pro-drug. I don't really care what side you're on. Okay, right? I've always said, right, like, as much as people want to think that I'm a capitalist, right? Like at the end of the day, you want to talk about free markets. That's what free markets are.
Yeah.
The
Somebody
state determined it was legal. Let it in.
Let it in. And someone in the audience that was there made a point to say that this is no different because one person spoke up about it. They had concerns. She worked in, I guess, in drug rehabilitation, and so she had her concerns about cannabis. But another person in the audience said, "Well, how is this different from having a bar?" Right? Alcohol is legal. People get drunk. People can go out and have a car accident. Is there a risk if people have cannabis, smoke cannabis, whatever? Well, yeah, but anything can be done in excess, including drinking. And we have bars. We don't have as many bars as we used to, but we still have. There's a bar on 211. Bars, nightclubs. Remember the days we had nightclubs? I mean, it's kind of in the same vein. So yes, it's something that could, to a certain degree, increase people's uses, and and obviously that needs to be, I guess, policed.
I've done drug prevention work, right? And
Okay.
and nobody in this community really has done as much as me, right? In the drug prevention field, okay, only
Well,
because
that's a big thing to say.
in our area, like just in the vicinity, like I mean, well, listen, okay, it's exaggerating, but I mean, like, you think about some of the local things, right? I started Walk Hill Cares, right? Walk Hill Cares was then formed into Hope Not Handcuffs, right? Without Walk Hill Cares, I'm not sure you get a Hope Not Handcuffs coming into our community. I really don't know if you do, because the DA's office was against it at the time, right? Not only that, right? It was like the only program. Walk Hill Cares was the only program in all of New York at that point.
Really?
Right? Like all of New York. Like it was
tell everybody.
Well, sorry, not all of New York. There was one up in Chatham. So Chatham, New York had one, and we had one. And that was it. There was only 2 programs in all of New York, right, that had this program. Okay, where you could walk into a police station and ask for help and get the help. Okay, and then and we also got a rehab. I helped get a rehab in town. Okay, right.
Is that where the old Holiday Inn was?
Holiday Inn, yeah. So I've done a lot with drug prevention, and if you look at the next thing that woman said, which was she had very valid concerns, was it's really not about the licensed places that sell, right? Because they are heavily regulated. They are, like, you do have to show a license. Like, they do have to keep inventory and all that kind of stuff. It's the illegal places, right? But what makes the illegal places, right, so enticing? It's the lack of available legal places. Okay? We saw this during Prohibition. We saw this in this country. Okay? So this is, right, like, it's like one of those things. We know what history tells us on these things. Okay? You have a legal place, people are going to buy it legally. They don't care how much they're taxed. I mean, like, listen, you could go buy an ounce of weed illegally cheaper than you can go buy an ounce of weed legally, right? But people are going to buy it legally because they would rather have the legal kind. Because then they know that because people want.
They know what they're getting.
Generally speaking, people want to know what they're getting, and they want to do things legally. People generally want to follow the law. Like it's not like the billionaires who wake up and they're like, how can I avoid paying taxes, and how can I break the law today? Who can I rape and kill, murder today?
And how can I milk the public and profit off of it?
Right. most people just are like, okay, this is the system. I'm gonna follow the system. That's who we are as Americans. And so yeah, I mean, this needs to be revisited, as the supervisor said. It was a very good comment, very good question. I certainly appreciate it. Yes, we do have to look after our children, but at the end of the day, we can't sacrifice, you know, things that we enjoy as adults just because of children, right? Like, I mean, that to me is absolutely crazy. Like, why don't we just go back and ban cigarettes again and ban alcohol again? And, like, there are a million things that we could ban
Ban
that
sharp
aren't good for
objects.
us,
You
right?
know?
Like, that are bad for children. But at the end of the day, we have to hope that adults are going to be fucking adults and you
Yeah.
teach your kids right. Like, I mean, come on.
And be responsible for their children.
I mean, what we're seeing is we're seeing a society in decay. You know,
Serious decay.
Like parent, like these coalitions thinking like parents, don't parent. We're gonna parent for your kids. And ICE running around, raping people and murdering people and doing all the shit that they're doing. Like, I mean, what is going on? What is going on in this country? Like, this wasn't like this. Like, you may not have
No.
liked Biden for one reason or another. You may have thought he was kind of sleepy, right? but like, seriously, you're gonna say this is better? Like I was just at a meeting where I was practically, me and this other guy were at each other's throat over an agency, a rogue agency, right? Like wanting to come into our community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we both live here, and we both have a lot more in common than than anything, right? Than we don't have in common.
Yeah.
Like we have our local community.
That's what I want to bring that back then. That's why we need community, and more, and maybe we'll wind up here. I've been seeing this trend in podcasts that take on big national issues. They're talking more and more about getting out into your community, like we did this evening, and meeting your neighbors. So we're so what do we do? We're buried in our phones. We're watching the television. Actually, most of us are watching now on our phones. Like, our phone has become our lives. It's the TV. It's our communication device. It's our social media device. Right? When we could just go out and meet our neighbors and talk and have lunch and have dinner and talk to and have real conversations. I think if you get away from the rhetoric and really listen to what the other side is saying, you can come to you can communicate and see, I don't know, come to an agreement. I come to an understanding, at least. Oh, you don't think so? I don't know. I maybe it's too late. Maybe we're beyond that point where we're beyond being able to understand each other, and that's sad. That's sad.
I think we do understand each other. I really do. Like, I mean, that's. I know that we're gonna wrap up, but I mean,
no. Go on.
I really, I really do think we both sides understand each other. I don't think this is a lack of understanding. This is a difference. This is a institutional difference in philosophy, in morals, and in judgment. Okay? And what I found in my life, and listen, we're both the same age, right? What I found is those three things, people aren't going to change their minds. That's instilled in them. That was what they grew up to believe. That's a belief system. That's just who they are. You're not going to change anybody's mind. about
Yeah, no,
this. This is
no,
not something where you listen to somebody. You know, the only way you can have a conversation, right, with the other side is if you accept the premise of their argument.
that's the
Okay?
only way you can.
And once you've accepted the premise of their argument, you've already lost the argument. This is why Democrats have lost the argument forever and ever, and why they continue to still lose the argument. Right? This is why Mamdani won, is because he didn't fall for that. And I'm
True.
done playing that game. Right? Like that's what these billionaires have installed in us. Right? That's what we've been trained. We've been trained, right, to respond by accepting the premise of somebody else's argument, okay, and then going from there, okay. And the issue is why don't they ever have to accept the premise of our argument and try to convince us, right? Because there's no foundation of their argument, okay. Even the Cato Institute, a conservative think tank, said that there's no premise to their argument. There's no basis to their argument, right? So if there's no foundation to their argument, what are they really arguing it on? That's why I always that's why I start the questions, and I say okay, well, where's your basis for this? What makes them this? You know, like I ask those questions because it gets to the root of their misinformation. And it doesn't accept anything.
I always ask the question, you know, like I had an argument with my mother on this, right? And I don't need to go into the details of that, but I simply said, these are the people who shoveled your driveway, who mow your lawn, who clean up your tables at the restaurant. You know, like if you see them all the time, they live in your community, they've built families here, you've seen them all the time, and the one thing maybe you don't know them personally enough to know that they don't have the right paperwork. That's really what you're talking about when you're saying illegal. They're undocumented. They don't have the proper documents. But let you know, if you get to this point with these people, because they've interacted with them, they know they're mowing their lawn. Are you going to pick up the phone and say, well, he doesn't have the right documentation after 5 years of mowing my lawn here, and I've been friendly with him, and I've seen his little kid, and, you know, growing up here. And it's so hard to get these people to the human side. They don't want to go there. I know what you're saying. I totally know what you're saying.
But here's the thing. Most of them are documented. Okay? If you're in court, you're documented. You may not necessarily be like, quote unquote, have your work permit. Like, it could take up to a year between when you get renewed, okay, and when you get your renewal card. Okay? So in that span of a year, okay, after your approval has gone through, but before you get a card, right, you are considered undocumented because you don't physically have the document.
But it's in process.
But you've been approved. You have now an order from either the State Department or whatever saying you've been approved, right? You have a letter, but that letter isn't documentation, right?
Right.
Like,
it's not official.
And I'm like, this is what bothers me, is the only the only organization that can determine legality is a court. A court is the only thing that can determine if you're legal or illegal, right?
That is right.
Again, it is not up to the executive branch. It's not up to the president. It's not up to one person. It's not even up to an ICE agent to make the determination of whether you are legal or not legal. Okay? Okay, and that is what's bothering me, is the fact that these people who want to talk about rule of law, okay, and want to talk about illegal, okay, well, legal is due process. It's called your Fifth Amendment right. It's called your Fourth Amendment right.
Not to
Okay?
be broken into.
Right? So every person, not citizen, person is entitled to that. Okay? And when it's denied for everybody. That's why I'm so frustrated. When it's denied for one person, it is denied for all. Okay? So
They
you
can
may
do
say,
that to
well,
anybody.
I'm fine. You could say, I'm fine. Well, my rights weren't violated. Your rights were violated. As soon as their rights were violated, your rights were violated, because that means that one person can make that determination. And on any given day, you could be that person. Okay? That's my, you want to know my fear? That's my fear. Okay? That's what I am concerned about. That is, that is the biggest thing here that we are talking about. Okay? Is the fact that legal, illegal, right? Your ICE boys are violated 2,300 laws in the last 6 months, and they violated 96 court orders in the month of January.
In Minneapolis alone.
Right? I mean, stop talking about the law with me. Stop talking about legal and illegal. You don't know what it means. You don't understand the law, right? Go read until you go to law school. Okay? Right? Until you go to
Or
law
at least
school.
work in it like I did.
Right? Or become a paralegal or work for a law, whatever. Right? You really have no right to talk about the law. Okay? Yeah. Because if you took a high school civics class, you have an idea that what's happening is not right. Okay?
Yeah.
And, I talk about laws because I've done research, I've looked things up, and I've read things, and I understand, and I know what my constitutional rights are. And I can see when somebody else's constitutional rights are being violated. And if I see it, I'm going to say something about it.
There you go. And that is I feel exactly the same way, and I think I want to point out just that is exactly what Maria, the woman in the, I believe she said her name was, but God, I hope, and I apologize if I did, that's not the right name, but that was where she was leading with all of these abductions of people and people going into these concentration camps, and she did say concentration camp was. People were being taken and not being given those due process, their due process rights, the opportunity to get in front of a judge, plead their case, and get a ruling. And they're not at this point. Even the habeas corpus petitions are not being. They're not obeying anything. They're violating court order after court order after court order. That is not a rule of law. You don't have a rule of law if you're constantly violating them.
I want to know where the kids are. Where are the kids? Yep. These kids that are being abducted, these kids that are being taken away, these kids that are being taken by rapists and billionaires and I don't even know what to say. I want to know. I want to know.
We all want to know.
I've had this to me is absolutely bananas. It's like the most bananas thing. You have children disappearing at the same time as a billionaire child predator sex ring
is being exposed.
Right? Where the billionaires who were integral in this ring, right, are orchestrating your secret police. And have contracts with your secret police. I'm baffled. Right? That it's not driving more people nuts.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's face this. I stands for, I even said this, when I was having my argument, it's like, what do you, I stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're not doing that. Citizens are not their jurisdiction. They are not in the case of, well, briefly, I'll touch on Renee Good here. They were all upset that she was in the road. Guess what? Road traffic enforcement is not their jurisdiction. Okay. Now I hear they're conducting security at the Olympics. Security, personal security, and Secret Service is not their jurisdiction. They are immigration enforcement. And then Steve Bannon said, "We're going to send them in to election to polling locations. We're going to put them out on the streets for polling locations." Sorry, that's not their jurisdiction. So, either they're immigration enforcement or they really are something else. Which is it?
There was a woman in Oregon. Okay, another woman in Oregon. She was on her way to a doctor's appointment. Right? So she was just driving on the road. Nothing with ICE. Had no dealings with ICE. Nothing. Okay? Maybe she was at a previous protest. Who knows? I don't know.
She actually wasn't.
She wasn't. At that point in time, she was not. Okay? She, all of a sudden, 4 cars, like, surrounded her car. So she couldn't go anywhere. She was driving down the road. Right? Surrounded her car. Okay? Next thing you know, they come pounding on the window. Right? Now she has asthma. She's on the way to a doctor's appointment, so she's not, not well. Right? Didn't even give her a chance to, like, roll down the window or anything. They immediately busted the window. Okay? Dragged her out of the car, tearing her shoulder muscle, the rotator cuff, right? Tearing her rotator cuff and breaking a rib. Okay? Pulling her out of the car. Okay? They then beat the shit out of her. Okay? Went into her car, dumped her purse on her chair, saw her U.S. passport, and then left her on the side of the road to die. Okay? She was lucky. She got it. She had grabbed her phone. She had called her daughter, who actually happened to be on a phone call with her union rep, notified the union rep that her mother was in trouble. The union, right, mobilized help for her, organized people to get the mother so that the mother could then get medical attention.
Incredible. I thought you were talking about the story of the disabled woman that was dragged out of her car, but that was in Minneapolis. And that woman actually spoke before Congress last week. And it was a heartbreaking story. This is a new one.
This just happened. Yeah, this just happened. Right? So they really don't care. Immigrant, non-immigrant. They really just don't give a shit. This is just about terror. Right? And this is just about creating content for billionaires, right? Because the billionaires love the violence.
It's more than the billionaires, because they're making snazzy little films and putting them up on their social media, and it's all theater and all entertainment, all red meat for MAGA.
It's what you call violence porn.
Yeah.
It's violence porn. They're creating violence porn.
That is an accurate description.
They're creating violence porn on the streets of America, right, to satisfy their depraved, whatever you want to call it.
Their base.
Not even their base, like their urges, their depraved urges.
Yeah.
They really are fucking disgusting. And the fact that, like, there are any negotiations going on in Congress, right? Like, the fact that you have Republicans and Democrats playing this theater game of negotiations about what to do with ICE, right? Like seriously, like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
But see, I want to point this out. I
don't even get it. It drives me nuts.
They're not interested in dealing with that, because they can stand up and they can fight back and they can get results when they want to, because last week the president put that horrible racist video of President Obama and his wife as apes. We all saw that. That was a terrible thing to do, and there was major pushback. There was pushback even within MAGA on that. But you know what? Republicans stood up and spoke up And you know what? It got pulled down. It got pulled down. And so you can get together and you can speak out. You can fight back on ICE. You can listen to your constituents, because a lot more people are against this than they are for it. And you can freaking speak up. We know you can, because you just did it last week. Okay.
But was that theater? Was that theater, or was that reality?
But it got result. The reality was it got pulled down.
Video got pulled down. But the message was pretty freaking clear. His message was clear. He got it out there. Everybody was outraged for a second, and you have everybody still supporting him. Nobody walked away, right? So until the Republicans and the Democrats, until they stand up in unison and say no more, okay, it's just theater. And again, I go back to, they're both being paid by the same fucking people.
Yes.
And like these billionaires, they're just giving, they're telling the Democrats on the side, like, listen, this is what you could say, this is what you can't say, this is what we want you to do. Like, as I think I outlined on Sunday, right? The first thing that should be negotiated on the table, put back on the table, is taking away those tax breaks for billionaires. Right? There should be an in-depth review of every contract to one of those billionaires. Okay?
Absolutely.
Just as Frank said, right, tonight, we heard him out in his town hall. Frank said, we're going to do a review of every contract. There should be a review now of every contract. Congress should now be taking a look at every contract, right, and saying, is this one of the Epstein billionaires? No more. We're not paying this fucker anymore.
And where is that money going? Is it being funneled? We have money laundering left and right.
This is what I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, everything is like superficial. It's literally like Democrats arguing, listen, how about ICE just follow the Constitution, right?
How about we just don't deport Americans?
If your argument is to not deport Americans and to follow the Constitution, they've already given you your answer. Okay? Because they could have done those two things at any point in time. Right? As soon as you brought them up and said, hey, listen, this is what we want to do, you could have immediately said, hey, you know what? ICE, back it off. Don't deport Americans. Stop harassing Americans. Like, let's just go back to normal. Right? Like, go back to normal operations. They could have said that. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, can we stop pretending? Like I just want to stop pretending. I don't live in a fantasy land. I live in reality. Right? Like, let's just stop pretending this nonsense and let's move forward.
Yeah.
All right, and we I think we need to
I know you got to go walk the dog. Hey, folks, I will be uploading clips from tonight's meeting for those that want to watch that. Also, Neil told me he is going to be away Sunday to Tuesday to attend, I guess, a town training or something. So he won't be. We usually record on Sundays, so we'll try to do a recording if you're available. We'll try to do something beforehand and get something for you. But I have a nice surprise. I have a special guest that I'm going to be recording with on Sunday. She's a friend of mine. She's also someone I know from my grooming background, but she is also a history teacher and a historian. And so we're going to talk about some history here on Sunday. So that's going to be a good recording, and I'll make sure to get that up. But we will be back here. Hopefully, you'll be back on Tuesday. If not, I'll be here alone next Tuesday night to bore the hell out of you. All right. So as always, thanks so much for watching. We really do appreciate you. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Check out all our other content, our videos. We've got like 135 things up there now, and we're hoping to grow our channel quite a bit. We need more voices in the pro-democracy movement, and we're here with you. And Thanks again for watching. Take care, guys.